because the organization, the agenda, whether you like it or not, is communist. That's what it is. The movement is about identity politics. And the cause, anti-racism, well, we should all be anti-racist.
Hello and welcome to TRIGGERnometry. I'm Francis Foster.
I'm Konstantin Kissin.
And this is a show for you if you want honest conversations with fascinating people.
Our brilliant guest today is a conservative YouTuber, Mahyar Tousi. Welcome to TRIGGERnometry.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on the show, man. You've been doing some great work in the last few weeks, and we're delighted to have you on. But for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, just give us a background. You've obviously got an interesting backstory as well. Tell us, who are you? How are you where you are? What has been the journey that brings you to this very uncomfortable chair right here?
It is quite uncomfortable, actually.
We do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so usually people say conservative YouTuber because it's easier, obviously, to say that. But it's longer. My definition is I'm more of a classical liberal conservative YouTuber or libertarian-leaning conservative. It's very long. Complicated because I think it goes back to my background. So I was actually, for those who don't know, I was born in Iran. I came here as a kid. My mother was a political refugee. Came to the West, obviously, to have freedom. And I grew up in a council estate in Lewisham, kind of like a typical working class London life. And
So you downgraded from being in Iran.
Yeah,
You went down
I had a relatively middle class family in Iran, and then that was the first culture shock. The second shock was the fact that I came here. I thought people in the West would be very proactive, positive, because they have more freedom. The area I was living in Southeast London, everybody was grumpy. Everybody was saying this is the worst country ever. They were just unhappy, and I was like, well, this is not working. There's something wrong, because I was seeing the good things and didn't think of it as the perfect thing, but things were going well. At least we were free to leave the house without being worried about the police.
That was before the lockdown.
That was before the lockdown.
Are you sure this is Lewisham, Maya?
Lockdown has brought back some nostalgia. I was actually on the tube earlier. Everybody has to wear masks, but people are just having their masks like hanging around their neck, and then if they see an inspector, they put it back on. It's just like in Iran because headscarves are mandatory, so women just leave them hanging. When they see a police officer, they just put it back on. Same thing.
Right.
But yeah, so obviously I came here, went to university, studied finance, and then I realized I don't want to work in finance, it's too boring. So worked in parliament, then I realized I don't actually want to work in politics because it's also boring and the money's terrible, but I was political because of my background. So then I just had normal jobs, I did it, worked in a pizza shop and everything. Then I started YouTube as a hobby. And this was the moment when the Iranian regime decided to ban me from entering Iran because apparently I am now an MI6 Tory agent, if you didn't know. So if I go...
You're not being very covert about it, mate. You're putting your shit on YouTube and everyone's watching it.
But the new training we've got is double bluff. It's pretty but we've had some budget cuts in MI5. So they banned me. So I got angry. So I went on YouTube and Facebook, made videos and started ranting. And my friends were like, just make more videos. So I made videos and then Brexit happened. And then that's when I peaked. And now that's where I am.
And you peaked because you were pro-Brexit.
Yes. So obviously, after the 2016 referendum, I campaigned for Vote Leave. And we thought, that's it. Victory. Done. Let's move on. But then 2 years later, we're still stuck. So this is around 2018, 2019, or the end of 2018, that's when I started doing the YouTube videos again because of Brexit and how Theresa May was a terrible manager as a leader. And that's when a lot of my audience were created because they were sick and tired of the mainstream media. They didn't get proper information or update on Brexit because they were just repeating the same things. So I was trying to give them some more information about what's actually happening. And what I've always been doing with my channel is I'm always open and honest about my leanings so that I don't pretend to be completely impartial. But I always try my best to say I'm being objective. These are the facts. This is my opinion on these facts, but you decide for yourself. Do your own research, whatever you want to do. So I think that's what people like. So.
And why is it that you have these sort of conservative leanings? Was there a specific moment, or is it kind of an evolutionary thing?
Why are you so evil?
Well, I hate poor people.
No, it's not. Come on.
No,
come on. It's not evil. It's problematic. That's what you want.
Problematic. I love that word. Problematic. Everything Constantine says is problematic.
Yes, that's true.
I think it's for a lot of people I know, especially younger conservative-leaning people. Usually, you meet some people who were left-wing or born into a socialist family, and they had an awakening, a red pill moment, or some people just born into a conservative family. for me, it's kind of neither. It was gradual, but then deep down I realized it was always in me, genetically and also upbringing and everything. I'm culturally conservative. So when people ask, well, are you left or right? Because it's quite vague. I would say culturally I'm conservative. So I believe in flags, border, family. Economically, that's when my strength is. I'm a free market capitalist. I basically believe in almost no control. I could compromise on a very, very tiny safety net to make sure that people are still protected. And socially, I'm a libertarian. So I believe you should be able to do whatever you want as long as you don't harm anybody else. And I think it's just been always in me. And I think because of my upbringing in Iran, we were told you're not allowed to do certain things. So you just want to be free. I think that's how it was created.
And do you think we don't, how can I put it, appreciate freedom in this country?
Yeah, we take it for granted massively. It's a cliche. We've always been talking about this for years and decades, and everybody, intellectuals from left and right. And we could always talk about like 1984, the book and everything, but it is a reality because also not only that people are not grateful for the freedoms they have, but they're also not interested in politics. But that could be a good thing. So in the West, when things are relatively well in a society, things are generally good. You're safe, you have a job, you have family. People aren't interested in politics. They also don't go out to vote properly. Whereas in countries like Iran or other countries kind of like Russia, when they have elections, people even know that those votes don't really count. They still queue for hours to vote, even though they know it's rigged. But it's because that's the value that they want. And but in the West, we take it for granted. And I think if we're not careful, I'm not one of those pessimistic people, but over the next few decades, not just yet, especially with the woke stuff, right now it's a joke, but eventually it could get serious, and we could shoot ourselves in the foot.
It's a really interesting point you make about appreciating the opportunity, and I suspect it's probably a symbol of how successful the West has been in creating a stable society, because you talk about Russia and Iran and all of these places.
Glorious nations.
Yes, exactly. Fantastic places to live, unless you have the wrong opinion. In those places, the outcome of an election has the potential to radically transform society. In other words, if you have one person, two candidates, one of them will create a society that looks nothing like the other one, right? And that's why people feel so strongly and passionately about the right to vote. In this country, vote Labour or Tory, it almost feels like nothing will change. And I think that's probably a big part of why people can become quite apathetic. It's a measure of how successful we've been, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is the problem. I've even struggled with this because on the one hand, so the British democracy is not full democracy. That's the whole point of the system, the constitutional monarchy, the head of state that we have is there to keep everything stable. It's there to have the Tories and Labour be centre left and centre right, basically boring. Not much will change regardless of how you vote. So that's the objective, which is fine. But I have a problem with that because then you create an establishment that is very complacent, they make the wrong decisions. Ideally, you want a more radical options, but then that's also kind of drastic because you could eventually technically vote for a communist or like Corbyn or whatever. It is a bit of a risk, but I feel like I'm one of those. My politics, if I were my ideology is I'm a humanite. I do believe in and trust humans, even if they make mistakes. They're gonna have to make the mistake to realize what it is. So I think I prefer to have radical options than just complacency.
And there was a radical option at one point in the last general election, which was the Brexit Party, wasn't there? Which obviously is now defunct. But at the time, it was a radical option for a lot, particularly for working class people who felt disenfranchised.
Yeah, you could say the Brexit Party was the most radical option, for example, but only in a sense that it was more of a wave, not policy-wise, not in terms of policy. It was the whole kind of anti-establishment sort of mentality. And so, it's not necessarily that radical in that sense. But as we just said, it's because when the political system becomes so centralized and complacent and they all look the same, sound the same, walk the same, if something like the Brexit Party comes up, for the British culture, that's like radical. The Brexit Party for the rest of the world, in Europe, that's like tiny and like moderate and like very nice. They didn't say anything too bad. They didn't say anything that crazy. And one of the controversial policies was to scrap HS2, which I believe in. So yeah.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things to me, you talk about, you believe in borders. So you basically agree with the people who created Chop and Chaz. They seem to have found the new belief in borders all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
But it always boggles my mind that people think that's like a controversial idea, because actually a lot of first generation immigrants like us who came here under the existing legal system don't support people who come here illegally or in very large numbers, because we recognize that people need to come here, they need to integrate, they need to become part of society, they need to learn the language. And when you get a mass wave of immigration, that sometimes prevents that from happening. And it's not a criticism of those people or rejection of them. It's just recognizing human reality, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we get called that we're taking away the ladder that we use. It's not the case. It's in reality, the way I see politics, I know people use that example, Margaret Thatcher saying like economics, like fiscal conservatism is basically good housekeeping. But politics, I always also see it just like how you see your personal life, just life in general on a basic level. You have a home, and the house has a door and walls and ceiling. That's your country as well. That's your tribe, because people are tribal, and tribe starts from home, and then your neighborhood, and then your social circle of friends, and then your city, and then your country, and then your planet. That's just how it is. And when we say, for example, first generation migrants, when they are, or even second generation, when they talk about borders, people on the left say, well, that means you're now fascist, or you're pandering to the people who hate you secretly. But no one said close down the borders. This is why you're going to say like Chaz and all these like lefties who are being exposed, because the hypocrisy is that, 2 days ago, they were saying that both in America, Trump, and in the UK, we've had police funding in the budget. How dare you, the crime's going up. And then 2 minutes later, it said defund the police. Pick a side, guys. And it's a weird situation. Yeah.
And why do you think the term patriotic has become such a dirty word for, it's particularly people on the left? Because, I was born here, you came here, so did Constantine. It's a great country. Out of a majority of the countries, it's one of the best. Why is it bad to be proud to be British?
It is I know most countries in the West are having this problem, but it's very specifically a British problem. Because in America, if you ignore the last 4 years of Trump, because even right now, even Democrats are patriotic. They use the flag and everything. Putting aside Germany, because that's a very exceptional case because of what happened. Even in France and all the countries, the Netherlands, they are very patriotic. Yeah. They're also very liberal, and they're very, obviously, Europhile, but they are very patriotic. It's a very British problem because of the culture, because the Brits, since the days of Anglo-Saxons, and then obviously you had the kings in England and then the British Empire, the whole concept of the Britishness or the Englishness at the time was simply to just get out there, explore the world, which was to expand. And then obviously the empire came and then trade across the world. So, and then now the Commonwealth, which is the same thing. They jumped to the next step. Like, forget about just patriotism for your country. Not saying to ignore it, but we could now just be internationalist. And then now that that's all over, a lot of people struggle to defend British values. So if you ask a generic Politico, I know, usually you get it from Lib Dems or Labour, what's British, and they say, tolerance. What on earth is tolerance? I don't. Firstly, people who think that tolerance is a good idea over acceptance, that's bad. I mean, firstly, it's good. It should be there, because if you say something idiotic that I don't like.
I like you pointed at me.
I was just about to say it's likely to happen.
But I should tolerate it. I don't have to accept it. But that's it's your free speech. But it's also my right to just tolerate you, not to be bad against you, because that's what you believe in. Tolerance is fine, but when people use it as a triumph over acceptance, because I think what they mean is we're welcoming and accepting, but they say tolerance. Britishness had struggled in terms of defending the values that we have. And that's why even I sometimes struggle. So I always try to differentiate between patriotism and nationalism, and also globalism and internationalism. So in my view, international means that obviously you still believe in free trade and cooperating with your allies, but globalism in the sense that you believe in international bodies, and then like the United States of Europe running your country and other countries. Yeah, I'm against that. So yeah.
Right, it's about working together with other nations as opposed to eroding national identity and national sovereignty.
Yeah, never surrender.
That makes sense. But it's interesting, and I'm curious to ask you this question, because I remember a couple of years ago making a very similar point to a comedian, may even been a friend of mine, and I remember saying to him, well, I think it's important that we recognize that Britain has a certain set of values, and there's such a thing as British values, and we must kind of. And he was like, "What are you talking about? There's no such thing as British values." And I'm going like, how can this? You can't survive as a civilization if you don't have any sense of what your values are, can you?
No, you do need to be self-aware, and it's not. I mean, we did criticize the struggle with the British values. A lot of people have. To be fair, people in France and other countries also have that struggle. Like, I was talking to an Italian friend who's thinking that their values are just basically getting rid of the Roman Empire. I was like, well, did you do it? And also, like, food. Like, I don't think food is your value, but
it definitely is, man.
I know. Well, in terms of the way you deal with it, and it's language and everything. But I think when it comes to British values, it should be a lot easier to defend or explain what they are, because they are out there. So, it's more visible, not visible in that sense, but like you have the modern structure of democracy came from here. The values of free trade came from here because they had to get out there. As I said, they had to go explore. And the modern version of justice in terms of the law and order came from here. And there's a lot of, and you could then talk about all the trivial stuff. And we were talking about food earlier with like Italy, but
having
language,
food.
humor, like all the things that, how you are with your neighbors, attitude, the whole self-deprecating stuff, the whole kind of be polite, even if you want to be like, very direct and say, I hate you. And I keep looking at you, I hate you. But, just be more civil and be more civilized. These are values. Yeah.
And why do you think that we can't embrace and love the fact that we're British and it's seen as a dirty word, as a dirty thing in this country?
We've been brainwashed with using our education system for decades. The only history that we actually learn in this country, apart from like the ancient times, is just about the Greeks and the Romans and a couple of things. But no one talks about the Persian Empire, the first empire.
No.
It's very selective the way history is taught. Then they skip from the ancient times. They skip most of it, and they come closer to basically after the 1500s, 1600s, and then the empire. And then so all you see and all you're taught is the bad things that come across as bad. Like, it's the moment when the West became powerful. So the West in history books have always been seen as superior. And now we have to feel guilty about it because it's now our fault. They forget about there was a time when Europe and Western Europe was just full of like villages and people were just eating with their hands. And it was the Middle East and East that, had civilization and,
medicine, architecture, mathematics, all invented by those Muslim empires that occupied that space. But you're right, we don't ever get taught about it. I'm not sure if they're having a conversation about slavery in the Muslim world at the moment, because they had a little bit of that, I've heard. So we seem to be taking a very one-sided approach to history, is what you're saying, really.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of all of that stuff in history, you've done some reporting, if you like, because what you've really tried to do, I think, more recently is to look at what's actually happening on the ground and present. Because I think you're right, a lot of people don't trust the mainstream media anymore. And we've seen it over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, it was laughed and mocked to death, the largely peaceful protests, which injured 27 police officers. All of that stuff. So you actually covered the BLM protest in London. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so firstly, I got there slightly later. That both sides were divided. I accidentally ended up on the BLM side. So I was walking, and then we had...
Well, you'd fit in, man. You'd fit in, just visually.
But Maya, sorry, just explain about where it was, what city you were in, and location.
So essentially, there was a massive protest in Westminster in central London, outside Parliament. This was a day when there was supposed to be a counter-protest against BLM, so the people who were trying to defend the statues. And that was a coalition of various groups. So you just had some random people, just like ordinary people, and you had some, veteran groups. You had your typical football lads. You did have a small group of, actual crazies who were just like causing chaos in the morning, but they all left. And but the media only talked about them, saying that they're all basically far right or whatever. And then you still had the Black Lives Matter / Antifa, and even in that group, you still had a lot of random kids, just being dragged there because they thought it was a good cause. Obviously, they don't know much about the organization. But then primarily, you had massive activists who been doing this for years. They're used to it. It's like young Jeremy Corbyn, for example. They love that sort of stuff. But I was there, and the mainstream media were, even the police were it was very interesting. The police on the BLM side, there was a massive divide. you had your typical standard community support police officers, genuinely, and then you had on the other side you had this like riot squad.
Yeah.
and again, surprisingly, not unsurprisingly, most of the violence actually came from the other side. I'm not even defending any side right now. I'm just being objective because the anti-BLM side, let's just say, they did cause some chaos at the beginning. They were randomly attacking the police for some reason, but we've seen the pictures, we've seen the videos, also the reports from hospitals. All the people who got attacked were attacked by the BLM side or Antifa side, but it wasn't really reported. So that's what I try to do, and when I try to be objective, sometimes I've angered my own side. Sometimes I criticize my own side or the conservative government, for example. But I don't care, because if you have to tell the truth, you just have to tell the truth.
So just to be clear, for anyone who may have not followed that necessarily in its entirety, what you're saying is you were at the protest, and your opinion is that most of the violence was instigated by the BLM associated groups rather than because with the pictures that I saw, and look, I don't know what happened, I wasn't there, but my impression was you had these football hooligan groups who were attacking the police,
in the morning,
throwing stuff at them.
Nazi salutes as well.
Nazi salutes, right? That apparently happened.
Well, no, that didn't, I mean, firstly, I didn't see it, and also the videos that they said these are Nazi salutes, they were just like literal, like football fans that do the kind of like this. And then the videos on Twitter that people shared saying these are Nazi salutes. And Gary Lineker, who's in football, he knows exactly what it is. That's why he got attacked saying, you do know that's not a Nazi salute. Right. But obviously there were people who would do that. I'm not saying there weren't. I would definitely be some people who would believe in that. And I'm not saying that the majority of the Black Lives Matter activists cause violence.
They were largely peaceful.
I mean, genuinely it was. I mean, well, peaceful in the sense that they were still causing chaos. They were still shouting. They were still throwing things.
Yeah, sure. But
But the majority of the violence happened from the BLM side. That's different. Yeah.
That's interesting. So why do you think anyone who was reading the newspapers or watching the news would have got a different impression?
So some people say the media are purposefully biased. Some people would go like with actual conspiracy theories that they're obviously funded by obviously Marxists. I mean, if I'll find evidence, I'll be fine. But I would go with the fact that they are completely out of touch. The mainstream media, these organizations, whether it's the BBC or anyone, like even Sky, they are very, very proactive when it comes to diversity of, finding staff members who are like in a different skin color or different genders. But in terms of the diversity of thought or actual values, they're all the same. They've all gone to Oxbridge. They've all went to the same schools. They've all obviously went to private schools and boarding schools. They've all had the same kind of groups, and they all believe in the same things, which is essentially big government, the control freaks, and nanny states. And it's difficult to be impartial if everybody in the organization believes in the same thing. And this is why I'm kind of against, actually, the concept of completely impartial news. I would rather have news outlets who are open about their biases of what they are, and left, right, up, down, and everything, and people could obviously decide for themselves. You could still have a concept like the BBC, but if they become completely dry and just report, very boring, just give out the stats, like fact check or whatever. But obviously no one will watch it because it's not interesting. That's the problem with it.
But Maya, don't you also think as well, it's that because our media is very left-leaning, isn't it sort of career death or suicide to come out and go, well, I don't really agree with the Black Lives Matter organisation, or I don't really agree with the way they conducted themselves, or there are acts of violence and thuggery on this particular side?
Yeah, so this is exactly what happens, not just with the media, with brands right now, companies. The so-called capitalist companies like Netflix and Premier League and Sky, they seem to be afraid, like the media, that their audience, the audience on this planet or in the West, are generally liberal left. That's not the reality. And again, it's because we've been brainwashed by the education and the media, thinking, for example, the whole country is like London. London is not the UK, firstly. It's not the representative of the UK. Like New York is not representative of America. But this is all you see. And it's like, when you watch Hollywood movies, like the American movies, everything's the same. But when you go to actual America, deep America, people don't look like that. People don't live like that. And it is going to backfire. My point is, for example, if Netflix are censoring their own stuff, if Sky or Premier League becoming really woke, like their audience are football lads, like They are gonna like lose revenue. They're gonna lose their supporters, and it's happened with Gillette last year when they did this woke adverts for their product, and they lost a lot of revenue. And ironically, they're supporting Black Lives Matter, whose agenda is to bring down capitalism. So the first people they go after is the same companies. So it's weird.
And when you were there and you were with the protesters, did a lot of them? I imagine a lot of them were just kids, young people, who wanted to make a difference. All very, very noble, but they didn't really understand what BLM is or their political goals.
No, I would say, I don't know if I should say it, but my sister, she's 17, and she's currently one of their supporters, like in terms of the cause.
Yeah.
So this is all the other thing. So there's the BLM organization, there's also the movement, and then there's the cause. People forget about that there are three. So some people say, I believe in the movement. No, I don't even believe in the movement, because the organization, the agenda, whether you like it or not, is communist. That's what it is. The movement is about identity politics. And the cause, anti-racism, well, we should all be anti-racist. I believe in that. That's fine. And I will fight racism if I see case by case, whatever. I don't believe that there is institutional racism in this country. That's what the movement tells you. And there are a lot of people who, especially young kids who are there, who, that's what they're fed. If a police officer in America is brutal against someone, well, it's definitely because that police officer is racist. But did you read his mind? Obviously, there are individual racist police officers, but firstly, you need evidence, because the data that came out that the police officers in America killed back in 2018 killed 9 unarmed black people, but also 19 unarmed white people. So that's just one piece of data, and there was also other data that should to prove that there's a problem with police brutality, not necessarily they're all racist or they have a racist guidelines and just go after black people. It's not true.
I think another question by the way, I really appreciate the way you've separated the movement, the organization, and the
cause.
And the cause. I think that's a really good thing, and that makes a lot of sense, because everybody supports the cause. Everybody supports ending racism or preventing racism from happening. But I think a lot of people don't want to go down that intellectual route of finding out what the cause and the organization. But it's not just too much. I think it's more than that. I think I've found myself saying to people, okay, you say you support Black Lives Matter, and I support being against racism. I completely support that. But have you had a look at what the organization actually stands for? And they go, no, send me the link. So I send them the link, and then I don't hear back. And I think part of that is, if you are given that information and you ingest it and you are intellectually honest, then you go, well, I can't support this, therefore I no longer support Black Lives Matter. And then people don't want to go down that route.
It's true, and then you find out you're Russian.
Exactly. Exactly.
Russian-fed information.
Exactly. I think a lot of people are just terrified.
It's also the fault of both sides. I don't know if I should say both sides, but all sides on every political debate, because humans are tribal, and it's literally like supporting a football club when it comes to political cause for some reason. Whereas, for example, Brexit as a topic was supposed to be quite, dry and boring. It's the concept of Brexit is supposed to be, who do you want to do your paperwork? The building in Westminster or the building in Brussels with these admins? It's a very bureaucratic thing, but obviously it became more interesting and sexy, so people took sides like football teams. Same thing with this. The problem is both sides, whether you're anti or pro BLM as an organization, they just shout at each other. So if you had someone coming to you pro BLM saying, can you prove to me that I'm wrong? Usually you would say, as an anti BLM, let's just say that person would say, well, it's because you're all commies. That wouldn't help. If you're kind of slightly more civilized and be like, this is the fact. Just I'll leave it to you, just whatever. And if they come back, then you could shout. Be like, oh, you're still a commie, you idiot. I literally gave you the information.
Yeah.
And I think this is the problem. But the cause, even the movement is idiotic. It's like going on the street and say the sky is blue. Well done. Or I like people like babies. Well, yeah, we all do. It's idiotic.
But the thing I was going to ask, and it's good that you've explained it. The thing I was going to ask about it is, and it's a question I haven't heard anyone ask or anyone explain the answer to, is why do you think we're having these protests in this country about something that happened in America? Why are people in Brazil protesting about this? Why are people protesting all around the world about this one incident that happened in the United States? Why is it that we do that?
It's because So people think it's as lazy as, oh, America just exports things to us, but like Halloween and everything. But it's not just that. It's the same reason that when, for example, someone like Trump became president, you had massive protests in London. Whereas if when the President Xi became president in China, you didn't have any protests because. So if I were to like put myself in the shoes of the left, they think that they have high standards of the West. They have high expectations from the West. And this is surprisingly, ironically kind of racist because they're putting Americans and the Brits in the same category. Well, because you look the same and you have the same language, so you are the same. And surprisingly, Americans are very different to Europeans. And so if they look different, Americans, like as a in terms of the masses, the skin color, and also had different language, I don't think they could have said that. It's because they generally look white and they speak English. They put us in the same category. And every single time there's a debate in America, we get stuck in it as well. And it's not just us, Canada and obviously certain other countries, Scandinavia sometimes. Whereas you're right, if people really, it's like Extinction Rebellion with environment. We are doing really well in this country in terms of being pro-environmental, whether you like it or not. That's what the government's agenda is. They're doing it really well. Everything's very clean and green. There are problems in Asia, India and China. Go there, but they don't do that.
And do you think, Mahyar, that what the BLM protest did is that it exposed that we have weak leadership in this country, particularly with Boris Johnson? Because I didn't see him really make a stand for a long, long time when everything was kicking off.
Yeah, I mean, with the short-term problems of letting these basically anarchists go around and do whatever they want, absolutely weak leadership. And Boris's government, the whole cabinet, Downing Street, have been very late to everything recently. Every decision, been late. Even with the lockdown, took them ages to decide if they're going to do it or not. And then with the schools, like, can you go back to schools? No, we won't. I'm like, okay, just decide. Everything was like this. And I think especially ever since he came back from hospital, he hasn't been himself. But that's one issue. There has been weak leadership in the West when it comes to tackling these things. But this is the recent one. We've had things like this before. Again, you had the anarcho-green people, protesting before and just did a lot of things. They shut down the city airport in London. But I think the weakness, the biggest weakness we have is intellectual weakness. And again, you can't fix it overnight, but you could use generation over generation to do it. But we can't because the education system and academia is dominated by the liberal left. And people who are right-wing usually either don't want to be teachers, they just want to live their own lives and make money or whatever. Or they get ousted and they get kicked out.
See, the thing is, I know that as someone who's a conservative, you're coming at it from that kind of angle, right versus left. I actually don't necessarily see it that way. I think what's happened in academia is the far left have squeezed everyone else out. So it's not a question of the right fighting the left in universities. I think what it's a question of is everyone being squeezed out by a crazy fringe. That I don't think, we have many people from the left on the show, people like Paul Embry, the socialist, Labour Party, lifetime member, etc., who has nothing in common with these people. And I think that's really the issue that people are going to have to confront is it's not in the interest of the left to be represented by these people, is it?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I mean, you just made a good point. Yeah, so to clarify, when I talk about the left, I am actually, talking about the hard left. And that's the problem. You just point out the problem. Even if someone like me says the left, I'm basically generalizing all of them.
Right.
Because,
you're racist.
Yeah, because, absolutely. I'm a sidist.
Yeah, sidist, yeah.
But because the rest of the left, or the center, which I don't believe in center, but like the moderate left, or the liberals, their problem, the problem I have with them is just they're all big government control freaks. But the actual hard left, which is a very more intellectual side, but also becomes very violent, like intellectually violent, is...
What does that mean, intellectually violent?
So they are exactly the opposite of my philosophy, which is, as I said, I'm a humanite. I believe in every single thing we should do, every policy, every direction with politics should be towards humanity, and not in a sense of compassion. That's the problem we have. People on the left, well, actually, general left, have the platform of compassion and good intentions. And say, because we care about humans, we should take money from that person and give it to someone else. Like, no, the basic values of humanity, which is freedom, don't tell people what to do, no coercion, and opportunity, and justice. just go with those values. And every single thing that we do, every policy should be to make sure you're not taking anyone's freedom. You're making sure that no one's getting harmed by someone else, and just let them be opportunities there to do whatever they want to do. And whereas when I said they are intellectually violent, they are essentially every single idea that they have, ironically, even though it's there to help people, they think they are there to help people, but it's actually very, very anti-human instincts. And that's the problem with the Marxism, or cultural Marxism, whatever you want to call it, that they're supposed to be coming up with all these ideas to help humanity, but they become so tribal that they're not defending humans anymore. They are defending their ideology.
And Mahyar, you said that you don't believe in the centre. Now, Konstantin describes himself as a centrist. Can you explain to him in 300 words or less why he's wrong?
Well, it's like bisexuals. Just pick a side. That's controversial. Well, it's like people who mix tea and coffee together. No, it's I get the concept of why people say, because as I said, the way I describe myself, it's a bit of a pick and mix sort of thing. So yeah, it's more of a. I would change the word centered with pick and mix, because you can't be a Puritan conservative or Puritan liberal or socialist. I don't think they exist. Some exist, and it's intolerable, because yes, you could be culturally conservative, but socially liberal or whatever. So people think that's the center. By a center, I don't mean people who have beliefs that are in a center. I'm talking about like political parties or the agenda.
Yeah, it's not an ideology.
It's not. Stop trying to make the center ground doesn't exist. It's a black hole.
No, I agree with you. Like what I mean when I say I'm in the center is that I have some conservative policies or views. I have some liberal views. It's just a mixture of the two, and therefore I don't feel like I'm part of the center right or the center left. It's just
That's
a
true.
mixture. So fuck you.
Yeah, welcome to the last episode of TRIGGERnometry, guys. But we always talk about going back to racism, that we live in a deeply racist country,
of course,
and it's propagated by people on the left. And you're somebody who came to this country as an immigrant.
Yep.
You came to this country from Iran. Do you think we have a problem with racism in this country? Do we think this is a racist nation?
Yeah, I had experienced massive racism in Iran. Well, not for me, but I've seen other people who. Yeah, so I could play the card, and I hate to play the cards because I'm just using it just to prove my point, that the personal card, because I don't like it when people say, well, I experienced this, that means that's basically the reality. But from personal perspective, we came here, my family, genuinely haven't experienced the racism in that sense. I've experienced racist comments, ironically from the left, people calling me Uncle Tom or whatever. And whereas I have cousins in Germany who every now and then they get beaten up in alleyways just because they're brown. Just casual, like they're used to it. It's like a Tuesday. Like just walking in an alleyway, like after dark, they're fine. They just go home and like, oh yeah, just got beaten up again. Yeah, genuinely. It's so there is, and it is the Germany that is now supposed to be self-hating and progressive. So it still happens. And again, you could use other continents and cultures in Asia, in Africa, North Africa especially. But I don't think you could find anybody who would be able to give you actual evidence. Even by evidence, I mean like actual like recordings, or like just use their phone to, for example, over a period of a month when they're out there, someone who's not white, to give you, oh, I experienced like 55 examples of racism in that sense, like constantly. It doesn't exist. It won't happen. Also, by racist society, I'm talking about institutional racism. Politicians, people in charge. It is absolutely, especially with the British culture, because they were exposed to other cultures because of the empire. And there was a reason that after the Commonwealth was created, they all wanted to come to the UK from Nigeria and India, despite the problems in the past. Whereas all the other colonies for other countries in Europe, they didn't really want to go to like Spain or Portugal. They all stayed in obviously South America or whatever. And I think, the British culture is because it's, as we said, more tolerant and just slightly nicer, because they have to be polite, because they can't be mean and racist to you directly. I can assure you won't experience racism as much in this country. That's my point.
So I guess what you're saying is there are people who may be racist from time to time, but it's not likely that the experience of an ethnic minority person is that day to day they experience this oppressive wall of mistreatment and
not just that. The sort of things that the English, let's just say, the actual English, like the people, go with the English identity, get accused of like racism, and with the Brexit stuff, the UKIP, whatever. I have spoken to a lot of these people, and we're talking about like ordinary people who like, just get involved with politics or go on the street or whatever. They get accused of being racist, but in reality, they're tribalist. They defend, Britain and the border and say, oh, well, foreigners are coming in here, taking the jobs or whatever. But when you actually talk to them and try to have a slightly semi-intellectual conversation with them, when you sit down, you realize it's not the skin color or anything else. It's the whole tribal thing that, we need to protect our community. We need to protect our country. We're not saying don't come in. We just don't want it like, I'm in a village of like 10 people, and then now we have 11 new people. Because the tribalism that I've experienced, these conversations from like people in Cornwall, people in Lincolnshire, they also hated people coming from London. so it's not the skin color.
To be honest,
yeah. So it's not the skin color. They hate other white British people coming to their communities and like taking their jobs. So it's not. It's tribalism. That's the problem we have in this country.
Yeah. But and again, whether you are going to be able to eradicate that from human nature,
no, you can't.
I don't know that you can.
No, that's the thing. When the movement of BLM think that we have to, eliminate racism and prejudice. Right. It's like saying there shouldn't be any bad. Firstly, there needs to be bad for you to recognize what's good. It's black and white. No pun intended. But it genuinely, you could minimize by creating a society that's more progressive, and that's just use education. And we are doing it already. The progress we've made over the past century, over the past few decades, they don't get it. It's the same with socialists who are anti-capitalist who are saying, oh, because we have homeless people, we have poor people. Yeah, but compare it to like a few decades ago. And, we're getting there, but everybody's in a rush. They want instant change. And the moment they try to fix it, they're going to create more problems.
It's very, very interesting that you say that. I mean, where do you see us culturally? Do you think we've hit a crisis point now between, because you said that we were making great progress, and I've seen society over the last few years with the digestion of identity politics become more racialized, we now like to put people into these wonderful little subgroups. And do you think we've hit crisis point yet when it comes to the culture wars, or do you think it's going to get worse?
It's not the peak yet, but doesn't mean that it will get to the peak in terms of it would like literally be like 1984. It could, but it could also go back down, not quickly and not that easily. So the two obvious options will either be scenarios. You could actually get to a point in the next few decades that we will have a 1984 society, a Big Brother society. This time, ironically, not created by the state or government, but by society itself, the mob mentality. And that's a problem. And this is the issue we have in certain cultures in like the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia. It's not just the fact that the state is authoritarian, but society is authoritarian, like anti-women's rights and everything.
But actually, before you go on, and I really want you to finish that point, I mean, you talk about how it would be the people. I mean, the people are going to find some voice. Some left-wing authoritarian is going to come along and going to say, look, in the interest of inclusion and diversity, people aren't going to be allowed to say what they think anymore. Yeah. And I'm the man or the woman or the whatever to make that happen for you. And if there's an electorate that wants that, they'll vote for that.
Yes. So this is my point. So we will either find a way in the next couple of decades, the next two generations basically, to become slightly more sound and fight back. Things will get semi-bad. We might actually have comedy be cancelled, but we'll still have some freedoms. But things like this, people will fight back. Or, yes, I know it's like massive exaggeration. People don't see it because we're so complacent. We've taken everything for granted. We've been in the West for a century, been good. We've had freedom. But nothing lasts forever. Even the Roman Empire didn't last forever. So I'm not saying it to be pessimistic or scaremonger anybody, but there could come a time, maybe in a century, maybe a lot less, that the West will be completely changed and will be dictatorial. And then I think you're going to have a situation where people are going to have to just wake up and rise up again. But then hopefully I won't be alive by then. I can't fight, look at me.
I don't think any of us are going to be alive at that point. I wonder whether you're right, and I also wonder whether decades is the right time frame.
Yeah, well, we need to fight now, and that's what I do on my YouTube, and that's what everybody should do. Comedians, again, brands, companies, there should be basically a new Netflix to fight against Netflix if they want to become woke. Like we should always do this. Basically, start now.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, with comedy, for example, there's already talk of like a non-woke comedy platform being created and stuff.
That will
like
be funny.
Probably will be very funny.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. For example, you talk about being libertarian. This may be an issue that we should discuss with you as well. Is what's your take on big tech, the censorship that we see from them, and equally, what's the solution there? Because Twitter is quite clearly biased. It's not an objective platform on the one hand. On the other hand, they've created this new Parler thing, which I've joined just because everyone's telling me to. And I don't want to be in that Parler world either, because it's very much the same, but from the other angle. It's just people from the right, and I'm not really that interested in being in an echo chamber. That's
the problem. And I've heard it so many times on YouTube. People say, we should create a right-wing YouTube, or like with Parler, because the current platforms are biased towards the left. I'm like, well, two wrongs don't make it right.
Right.
So as a libertarian, I believe private businesses should do whatever they want to do. But also as consumers, we could criticize them. And we could leave them, we could join them, we could do whatever we want. I don't believe we have... people who are worried about monopolies, for example, we haven't had, luckily, my side of the economic philosophy still is right on this. It might change, but we haven't had an example in the West or in the world to have a monopoly in any industry, especially long-term monopoly, that has been under a free society. Every monopoly we've had, like back in the 60s and 70s in the West, in America and other places here with oil, and then 80s and onwards with banking, it's always because there was government intervention. And it was always backfiring because government got involved to make sure there's no monopoly, and they actually created monopolies. And now in this country with the energy sector, the government got involved with the Labour Party, and we had like 14 companies, now we have 6 companies. So the best way to make sure that we don't have a monopoly like Twitter or whatever, or Facebook, is luckily tech is still set relatively free, because the internet is difficult to regulate. So there was a time when people thought Facebook was it. Like, if we're not going to have any new platforms and Facebook could become really boring, or Facebook could destroy us and we have nowhere else to go. But then obviously Instagram came. I know it's still linked to Facebook, but like in terms of platforms, and obviously Twitter, YouTube we have, and everything else, and now Parler.
But you don't think Google and YouTube are monopolies in their fields?
Well, so it depends how you define monopolies. They are big players. But by monopoly, I'm talking about the absolute monopoly, which is like, there's one website.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let me put it kind of bluntly for you. If YouTube ban you tomorrow, is there a place where you could go that you would be able to continue to do what you do?
I know the answer. It's 4chan.
That would be fun. Well, no. I mean, I'll
this is my point, right? Is they could destroy you in a moment's notice, and there's nothing you can do about it. You probably wouldn't even be able to get the information to people out there that it's happened in a big way.
Yes. Well, I would go to, what's that new fan?
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans. Okay, to OnlyFans. Make more money.
Put your stuff up on Pornhub or something.
Well, no. So on the one hand, again, as a libertarian, I would say I could create my own website and have a podcast, like a video podcast, and take donations or whatever. I'll sell my merchandise. But yes, I'll get a hit. I'll take a hit in terms of revenue.
Yeah, 99% hit.
Yeah, I know, yeah. So, but I'm fine with it, because if YouTube wants to kick me out, it's their business. It's like, people who are trying to force bakeries to bake gay cakes or whatever. I'm not religious, but it's their right if they don't want to do it. And they could have their own, again, under the freedom of religion, especially in the West and America as well. So we still have that. So you could also protect that, even though I'm not actually religious in that sense.
But Mahyar, don't you think they've simply got too much power? YouTube is simply too powerful. They're too big.
Yeah.
So actually, we need somebody to come in and break them up. Otherwise, what we're going to have is, it's a glorified monopoly, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
Well, it is a monopoly in that sense, obviously, and it's the biggest player. And but the moment you try to get, and when you say someone, if by someone you mean a government or politician, or a bureaucrat. That's never worked in the history of humanity. Again, this is the problem I have with the different political ideologies, because people usually go with the politics of intention rather than outcome. If we go with intention, we all want the same things. We want to eliminate poverty. We want everyone to be safe and healthy and well off and no monopolies. Everybody wants the same thing. It's the same thing with the whole BLM stuff. Everybody's anti-racist, but go with the intention and go with evidence. And unfortunately, it's not a sexy topic to talk about, especially when it comes to economics. So because I have to say. Because I come from the Austrian school of economics, which is kind of very libertarian, and like Hayek. And our side always struggled intellectually to defend or promote our values because it's not sexy. It's just like, let's have this platform free transactions, but trust me, it's going to work. I'm like, well, how long do I have to wait? Well, 10 years, 10 minutes. Whereas the other side, whereas the Keynesianism or liberal or socialist or whatever, they say, don't worry about the outcome, but this is what we want to do. This is the goal, and then no one actually cares about the outcome. It's like, oh, good effort. Didn't work, but good effort.
Right.
We still support you. That's the problem.
Well, this is where I think I agree with you very strongly, but I also disagree with you very strongly, which is that...
Such a centrist.
And I disagree with Francis in a sense, because I think you're completely wrong about diagnosing the problem. Because if YouTube were to ban you tomorrow, they have the power to destroy people who don't agree with them, and they will start to use it, in my opinion. True. On the one hand. On the other hand, I don't think breaking them up is going to make it better.
No.
And the real truth is, I don't know what would make it better. And so this is quite a dangerous situation, because what happens is, as you say, people start going from intention and they start flailing around and trying different things. They start, let's break them up. Let's revoke their publication privileges. If you do that, they'll censor even more than they already do, right? So I don't know what the solution is, but the problem needs to be addressed. And so we need to look for a solution. Going just like, I'm a libertarian, let them do what they want. I don't think that's going to work.
Oh, no. So I didn't say let's
maybe
not
I
do
misunderstood.
anything. Oh, no, I didn't say let's not do anything.
So what do we do?
Yeah. I didn't say if they kick me out, I'll be fine.
Right.
I'll definitely shout but the solution has always been there. Humanity. Humans, always society will have to fight back. Because we always live on, again, instinct of survival, and we almost went extinct a couple of times, since we were like cavemen. So we always find a solution, especially when it comes to free market and economics, supply and demand. If YouTube crossed the line a few times, and the thing is with these sort of things, when humans start to do bad things, like censoring stuff, for example. It's not just right-wingers that come after. Eventually, they're going to eat themselves at the left. Like they're going after J.K. Rowling now. And so when that happens, when they actually lose credibility, then there will be people who would actually leave the platform, enough of them, and then free market, it will provide a new company. That company doesn't have to be right-wing. Actually, ideally, it shouldn't be right-wing.
It shouldn't be.
It should just be, I'm here to make profit. That's the intention. Here's a new YouTube. And that will happen. And it's always happened. And people will say, well, how would you know it will happen? It's always happened with every industry, whether it's food, whether it's clothes, whether it's transport, planes. That was supposed to be a monopoly, but not anymore. People always, again, like taxis and Uber now, and then they've got new Uber websites and apps. Society will always provide.
All right, man. Well, it's reassuring when we get banned. All the three of us get banned. Somebody will come along and provide.
Maybe it might be a Russian state-funded platform. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
I'm sure it would be very,
very,
very secure, and no information would leak anywhere whatsoever. But Maya, thanks for coming on. We've got one more question before we let you go.
Which is, what's the one thing we're not talking about as a society, but we really should be?
This is a difficult one, because what I would usually say is the sort of things I've been ranting throughout the whole video. Let's genuinely talk about, whether we're talking about politics or behavior or our culture, let's focus on what is more logical and rational in terms of don't go with intention, go with outcome. And I think we have to talk about, the one thing we have to start talking about is academia and education. And we have to seriously look into reforming it, because we've been talking about how to reform businesses, these platforms and brands and politicians, governments. But not many people are actually talking about education. We're talking about how, there are left-wing, obviously. But we have no solution, because as I said, for example, I don't like to use the word right-wingers, but the anti-left don't become teachers, don't get into the education system. And then we wonder why each generation is becoming more biased and weird and avocado eating, Islington living.
Yeah.
So that's the problem we have. And I think we should really look into academia in the West.
You're right about that, and we get so many messages, both Francis and I, from teachers or people in the education system who say, "Well, look, I'm not right wing, but I'm not super woke left wing, and I feel like a pariah in the staff room.
Yeah.
People won't talk to me. I fear speaking my mind because I've seen what happens to other people who do." I think that there's a lot of people who watch this show who message us and say literally that, and I think that's an issue. I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. Mahyar, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people follow your work and check out the stuff that you do?
Yeah, so youtube.com/Mahyar Tousi. Well, basically my name is difficult to spell, but it's just my full name, Mahyar Tousi. Hopefully you'll join and subscribe and get free t-shirts. No, it's not free. You have to pay. But get t-shirts.
He's right wing. It's not going to be free, is it? Let's be honest. But Mahyar, thanks for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you very soon with another episode or a live stream. Make sure you tune in. We have a live stream on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as well as the 2 interviews that we put out on Wednesdays and Sundays.
Absolutely. And all our episodes and all our live streams go out at 7 p.m. UK time. 7 p.m. UK time. We'll see you there.
Thanks for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the bell button next to the subscribe button so you get notified when a video comes out, and follow us on all the social media @TriggerPod.
And also leave us a nice review on iTunes and spread the word.